Have you ever felt like you're searching for something in life, but you don't even know what it is?
Oh, that is the question, isn't it?
It really is. Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and joining me to unpack all this is our resident expert.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm really glad we're tackling this
Me
today.
too. So, our mission today is to dig into the profoundly insightful introduction of a book called The Path Within You by Akib. We really want to figure out why so many of us feel, totally lost, frustrated, or just burnt out when we try to find meaning.
Right.
And we'll explore how some incredibly ancient wisdom might actually hold the ultimate shortcut to your own self-discovery.
It's just such a perfect topic for the world we live in right now. I mean, think about it. You open your phone and you are instantly bombarded with information overload.
Oh, completely.
You've got wellness influencers, life coaches, modern gurus.
Everyone has a morning routine you're supposed to be doing.
Exactly. They're all telling you exactly what you should do to be happy or mindful or spiritual. And what's so refreshing about this text is that it isn't about telling you what to believe at all.
Yeah.
It's a genuine invitation to stop forcing yourself into boxes that simply do not fit you.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the author's own agonizing journey is really where this all starts. And honestly, it is so relatable.
It really is.
The author talks about spending a massively long time walking down the completely wrong road. He describes aching with this longing he couldn't even name.
Right.
And because he wanted so badly to figure it out, he just kept leaping from one spiritual or mindfulness practice to another.
Yes, and he was deeply sincere in his efforts. He describes trying meditation first. He sat down, crossed his legs, closed his eyes, and just expected profound peace.
Like we all do when we download those apps.
Right. But instead, he found himself restless, agitated, and bored within minutes. His mind was racing. So he figures, okay, maybe meditation isn't for me, and he abandons it to attempt devotion. Prayer, chanting, really leaning into faith. But his heart just refuses to settle into it. It felt forced.
And he doesn't stop there. He pivots again and tries reading endless philosophy. He's cramming his head full of high-minded concepts and existential theories.
Just trying to intellectualize his way to peace.
Exactly. But despite his intellect overflowing with all this information, he says his soul still felt completely parched. He even practiced physical yoga, got super supple and strong, mastered the breathing techniques, but still carried this quiet, unbearable loneliness.
He totally exhausted his willpower.
I really did.
What's fascinating here is what happens next. After exhausting all that effort and honestly feeling like a bit of a failure, someone finally asked him a question that altered the entire course of his existence.
I love this part.
They asked him, "You keep choosing paths that belong to other people. Have you ever paused to ask yourself which path is truly authentically your own?"
But, I mean, couldn't you argue he just needed to try harder? We live in a culture that worships the grind, right? If you aren't good at meditating, you're supposed to just force yourself to sit on that cushion until you are.
That is the modern trap.
Why is the immediate conclusion that it's the wrong path entirely?
Well, this raises an important question, and it's really the crux of the entire book. The problem wasn't his effort, and it wasn't his sincerity. The problem was his fundamental wiring.
Okay.
The text points out that the great sages of ancient India understood this thousands of years ago. They proclaimed with absolute clarity that every single human being is fashioned differently.
Our minds, our emotional capacities.
Exactly, our energy levels, they are incredibly diverse. Therefore, the spiritual journey of every human being must also be different. If you force a practice that goes against your inherent wiring, no amount of willpower will make it fruitful. You'll just end up resentful.
That makes a lot of sense when you think about how we learn in other areas of life. It's like trying to teach a classroom full of different kids the exact same way.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Right. If you have 30 students and you force them all to learn exclusively by reading a dense textbook, some will thrive, but a lot of them are going to fail miserably.
Exactly. And the book actually uses a variation of that specific classroom analogy. Imagine those 30 kids. They have the same teacher, the same syllabus. But one kid learns best by listening to a lecture. Another needs to write everything down in color-coded notes.
Oh, I was definitely the color-coded notes kid.
Right. And a third learns by watching visual demonstrations. And a fourth learns strictly by doing. They need to get their hands dirty and build the thing themselves.
Yeah.
If you take that fourth kid, the highly kinetic, action-oriented child, and you force them to sit perfectly still for 5 hours with nothing but a textbook, they are going to fail the test.
And the tragedy is, that kid is going to grow up thinking they are stupid.
Precisely. That failure does not mean the child is weak or incapable. It simply means the method is entirely wrong for their innate wiring. And in the realm of spirituality, personal growth, and finding meaning in your life, exactly the same principle applies.
So what does this look like in the real world? Because the author brings up these archetypes that really made the light bulb go on for me.
They're very practical.
Let's start with what he calls the logical mind. He describes a brilliantly intelligent, razor-sharp software engineer. A well-meaning friend tells him, hey, you're stressed. You need to come chant with me, visit a temple, and just completely surrender to the universe.
And the guy tries.
He does. He closes his eyes and tries to chant with every fiber of his being.
But nothing stirs within him. He feels no spark, no divine connection. He just feels slightly awkward and entirely disconnected. He ends up with this quiet despair, thinking there is a spiritual void inside of him.
Which is so sad.
But there is nothing wrong with him. His path is simply not the path of emotional devotion. His mind is an instrument of logic. He is an analytical machine.
So what should he do instead?
If you give that same software engineer the profound existential questions like, what is the true nature of consciousness? Or who am I beyond my physical body? And you let him logically deconstruct those questions, his entire universe will transform. He will find his meaning through radical inquiry, not through singing.
Contrast that with what the book calls the emotional heart. This is someone who is deeply sensitive, highly empathetic, a naturally loving person.
Yes.
But they feel like a total failure because they downloaded a mindfulness app and they get incredibly frustrated trying to sit in silent meditation for 30 minutes. They judge themselves so harshly for being restless.
And again, nothing is wrong with them. Their true path is one of devotion and love. If you immerse them in soul-stirring melodies or let them channel their intense emotions into a connection with something greater than themselves, they find the exact treasure they've been seeking.
They shouldn't be forced into cold, analytical silence.
Exactly. Their superpower is their feeling.
I want to talk about the third profile, the action-oriented soul. So I think so many people listening will relate to this. This is the restless person, the one bursting with kinetic energy. If you tell them to sit on a cushion and read philosophy, they physically ache. They just can't do it.
Because their soul craves action. They need to be moving. They need to help the suffering, labor in their community, build something tangible, or mentor someone.
Right.
When this type of person serves others or throws themselves into meaningful work without obsessing over the reward, a profound peace descends upon them. It's a peace that 10,000 hours of sitting perfectly still in meditation could never produce for them.
So how do we actually define what our specific nature is? The book introduces an ancient Sanskrit concept here called swabhav, which translates roughly to your innate nature or your fundamental temperament. It's essentially your spiritual DNA.
Yes, swabhav. It is the unique combination of traits, tendencies, and energies that you were born with. And to anchor this concept, the author quotes a highly influential ancient text, the Bhagavad Gita, specifically chapter 3, verse 35.
For a little context for the listener, the Gita is an epic dialogue about duty, action, and the nature of the universe.
That's right. And in this verse, it states a very profound idea. It says, it is far nobler and far better to follow your own dharma, which means your own inherent nature or duty, even if you do it imperfectly, than to perfectly follow a path meant for someone else.
Wow. So trying to be a perfect version of someone else is actually a trap.
It is. The text explicitly says that to walk another person's road is fraught with peril. Because when you fight your own nature, you create massive internal friction. You burn out. You become cynical.
That is just a massive relief. You don't have to be perfect at someone else's game. You just have to figure out how to play your own.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The text outlines 5 specific spiritual paths that act as a compass for us based on these different temperaments. Let's walk through these 5 rivers.
Let's start with the first one, Gyan Marg, which translates to the path of knowledge. This is the path for the skeptics, the logical minds, the analytical thinkers we were just talking about.
Their anthem, according to the book, is, I want to understand. I feel like this is for the person who naturally gravitates toward peer-reviewed studies, science podcasts, and intense debate.
Precisely. They seek truth through relentless questioning. They ask why at every single turn and cannot rest until every mystery stands in crystalline clarity.
So doubt isn't a bad thing for them.
Not at all. For them, doubt isn't a weakness or a lack of faith. Doubt is their actual spiritual practice. By tearing down false assumptions, they get closer to the truth.
The book mentions Adi Shankaracharya as the ultimate example of this. For those who might not be familiar, who was he?
Adi Shankaracharya was an 8th century Indian philosopher. He didn't just accept things on blind faith. He used intense, rigorous logic and debate to essentially prove the underlying oneness of reality.
He debated his way to enlightenment.
He really did. He would travel and engage in these massive philosophical debates, using his intellect as a scalpel. For someone on Gyan Marg, they reach liberation by peeling away the false layers of identity, using their sharp mind, until only pure truth remains.
Okay, but what if your brain isn't wired for all that intense logic? What if you're someone who actually gets completely exhausted by overanalyzing everything, and you just desperately need the noise to stop?
Then you'd likely be looking at the second path. Gyan Marg, the path of meditation. This is for the sensitive souls, the overthinkers who are burdened by their own racing minds, and the people who actually find deep comfort in their own rich inner world.
Their sacred call is, "Let all noise fall silent. I wish to journey inward."
Yes, this path beckons those who feel the external world is just too loud, too chaotic. They don't want to debate reality. They want to directly experience it in stillness.
Right.
They find peace by sitting, observing their thoughts arise and dissolve, and eventually becoming a pure witness to consciousness.
This is obviously the tradition of the Buddha, right?
Exactly. Think of the story of the Buddha. He tried extreme physical asceticism, starving himself, pushing his body to the brink, but it didn't work. He only found enlightenment when he finally sat quietly beneath the Bodhi tree and just observed his own mind.
He discovered the luminous self through profound stillness.
Yes. For a modern listener, this is the person who feels most spiritually alive when they are alone in a quiet room or taking a silent walk in the woods, just letting the mental static fade away.
Which sounds wonderful, but honestly, if you told me I had to sit under a tree in silence for days, I think I'd lose my mind. I need to be doing things. So where do the restless doers fit in?
They belong on path number 3, Karma Marg, the path of selfless action.
Their DNA is coded with the phrase, "I must act, I must live for others." Service isn't a choice for them. It is fundamentally who they are.
This is so important because society often paints spirituality as this passive, quiet thing.
Yeah.
But for someone on Karma Marg, action is their prayer.
Action as a prayer. I love that.
They find their ultimate freedom by acting without any attachment to the reward. They aren't doing it for the applause or the resume boost or even to feel good about themselves. They do it because the act of serving burns away their ego.
The book points to Mahatma Gandhi as the perfect embodiment of this. He didn't retreat to a cave. He threw himself into the messiness of political and social liberation.
Exactly.
But for a modern person, say, a busy corporate manager or a parent of 3, what does Karma Marg actually look like on a Tuesday?
For a modern person, it's the busy executive who finds their deepest sense of peace by quietly mentoring a struggling junior employee without asking for recognition.
Well, that's a great example.
It's the parent who approaches the exhausting daily tasks of raising children not as a burden, but as an act of profound, selfless service. It's the person who volunteers at a food bank on a Saturday morning, not out of obligation, but because the physical act of helping physically grounds them. They transcend their ego through their labor.
Action is a form of meditation. But what about people who need structure? People who crave discipline, routine, and really specific step-by-step physical grounding.
That brings us to path number 4, Yog Marg, the path of union.
Their mission is, "I seek to unite body, mind, and soul into one."
This path is for those who need a systematic approach. They don't just want philosophy and they don't just want to serve. They want a methodology. They use the physical body as the primary doorway to the soul.
The text mentions Patanjali here. I know a lot of people associate the word yoga with stretching in the studio, but Patanjali's system was much more than that, wasn't it?
Much more. Patanjali was an ancient sage who compiled the Yoga Sutras, creating a highly structured 8-limbed path. It starts with basic ethics, how you treat others and yourself. Then it moves to physical postures, which is what we see in modern yoga studios, to prepare the body.
And then breath work, right?
Yes, breath work to control the energy. And only then does it move into deep concentration and meditation. It's a ladder.
So it's very sequential.
Very. For a modern person on Yogmarg, they thrive on this discipline. They are the people who wake up at 5 a.m. for a strict morning routine, who use somatic exercises to release trauma from their bodies, and who find their spiritual center through dedicated, repetitive, physical, and mental discipline. They align their fragmented pieces into absolute wholeness through practice.
Which brings us to the final path, number 5, Bhakti Marg, the path of devotion and love. This one really struck a chord with me. This is for the deeply emotional, those whose hearts just naturally overflow.
The song of their heart is I Know Only Love. It is the path of total surrender.
And what's beautiful is they don't need complex logic, they don't need intense physical discipline, and they don't need to debate consciousness. They channel their massive emotional capacity to an intimate, overwhelming relationship with the divine or with the universe.
The historical example given is the poet Mirabai. She was a 16th century mystic and a princess in India. She literally gave up her royal status, her wealth, and her comfortable life because she was so entirely consumed by her absolute emotional devotion to the divine.
She just gave it all up.
She did. She spent her life singing, dancing, and writing poetry about this love. She released all analysis and simply loved. And in that love, she found everything she ever sought.
And for someone listening today, this might be the person who feels a profound spiritual connection when they are listening to incredibly moving music, or looking at a beautiful piece of art, or even just feeling an overwhelming rush of gratitude and love for their family. They feel their way to the truth.
Exactly. Their emotions are not a distraction to be conquered. Their emotions are the very vehicle that carries them to meaning.
So what does this all mean for you? When I was reading through these 5 paths, the big aha moment for me was realizing the sheer relief of it all. Realizing that you only have to master the path that matches your natural wiring removes this massive, crushing burden of guilt.
It's incredibly freeing.
You don't have to beat yourself up for not being able to meditate for an hour if you're wired for action. When you find your actual path, effort finally feels as natural as breathing.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the author beautifully explains that these distinct paths, Gyan, Yan, Karma, Yoga, and Bhakti, they are simply 5 different rivers flowing into the exact same ocean.
They all end up in the same place.
They do. The destination is identical. Whether you arrive through the sharp intellect of a skeptic, the overflowing heart of a poet, the tireless hands of an activist, the quiet stillness of a meditator, or the strict discipline of a practitioner, you arrive at the exact same state of truth, consciousness, and bliss. You just get to take the boat that actually fits you.
And that is just the ultimate life hack. Because whether you are prepping for a highly stressful meeting, trying to find purpose in a career that feels stagnant, or just wanting a little peace of mind at the end of a chaotic day, identifying your natural temperament changes how you approach every single challenge.
Completely.
If you know you're analytical, you tackle the stress logically. If you know you're action-oriented, you go for a run or clean the house to clear your head.
It truly does change everything. The key takeaway from all of this ancient wisdom, translated for our modern lives, is that your unique nature is not a problem. Your deep sensitivity, your restless energy, your need for structure, or your relentless skepticism, none of these are flaws to be fixed. They are a compass waiting to be read.
I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over on your own. It's drawn from a little later in the text, and it's a brilliant practical tool the author calls the situation test. It's a way to figure out your own spiritual DNA. Next time you witness a breathtaking sunset, pay attention to your very first split-second reaction before your conscious brain kicks in.
That unguarded moment.
Exactly. Do you try to analyze the light refraction and the atmospheric conditions? That's the path of knowledge. Do you fall perfectly silent and just watch, letting your thoughts melt away? That's the path of meditation. Do you immediately take a photo so you can share the beauty with others and bring them joy? That's the path of action.
Or do you take a deep, grounding breath to physically feel the moment in your body? That's the path of union.
Or do your eyes simply well up with tears of overwhelming gratitude for the beauty of the world? That's the path of devotion, that tiny, unfiltered reflex. That is your spiritual DNA speaking to you. Listen to it. If you enjoyed this conversation and want to continue this journey of self-discovery, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapter of this series.